Yeah.
How,
Well,
how do you feel?
no, I feel a little. I definitely need to drink water more frequently. That's for sure.
Yeah,
And I think
that
that's
made a
something.
big difference for me. It really did.
Honestly, the thing that I think that, especially when the attacks, I seem to be the most susceptible to it is when I don't have enough water.
Yeah, that's very important. That's what they want you to dehydrate. That's part of things. Have you read?
That lends credibility to the things that you hear about things with water supplies and stuff like that. I mean, that'd be the first thing you'd do, right? Is if you really want people to be stupid and not know who. Excuse me, I don't want to see. I think differently now, but I still go back to that language, and I apologize. I don't mean stupid. I just mean that they don't want people to know who they really are and what they're really capable of. Is that better? That's how I feel about it. I'm not saying that to be politically correct. It's just that I continually revert back to that language, and it's abusive, and I'm sorry.
I call it. Swearing like a trooper is.
No, no, I curse. Don't get me wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se. I just, it's more when I say that somebody's stupid. It's abusive language. I don't believe that a lot of what's happening right now is because people are just stupid or they're even willfully ignorant. I think that they're ignorant against their will and they just don't realize it. But that's a very large topic to get into.
Okay. God, I'm so quiet. One, two.
So yeah, so we're talking about this
Okay, this
technology.
is. I'll just do a take. This is a tape part. This is basis 57 part 3. Right. We were talking about
Yes.
buses and buzzing and stuff. Well, what do you
Yeah.
want to go into now? I mean,
No, no.
I
So
just.
I'm glad that's where we're going because so like I was saying like it's kind of important to kind of get an idea of the sensation to see if this is sort of a familiar feeling to you. The way I noticed that really resonated with me was that song TV on the radio called "Staring at the Sun" and the visual of that, the way it affects you.
Yeah.
So it feels like that, but it's like a negative sensation. And I was telling you before, it kind of pulses like electricity in your feet. And I was like to myself, well, I'm a troubleshooter. I'm a technician at heart. I need to troubleshoot this problem logically. I don't want to just like hop on the internet and go, hey, truth machine, where's my answers? Because there's so much garbage, so much fear based garbage that's designed to send you way farther down the rabbit hole than you ever started. And one of something, here's the deal, Miles. Like I'll tell you, this is how this is how they get you. I was having such an awful. Well, again, I don't know what it is yet. I need to verify it, and that's what I'll get to that in a second. But it was hitting me so hard. I was putting a wool blanket over myself because I don't know what else to protect myself with, and it seems to give me relief. I don't know why.
Is
It's
it because it's comfortable? It's warm. It's homely. It gives you
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
makes you feel
There's a
happy.
story. There's a deeper story about that, but I'll get into that another time too. But the actual the weight of the blanket and there's something about the way when I covered myself with it, I felt very protected. And
Just keep talking. I think my microphone's died.
oh, it might be me.
Ignore me. Ignore me.
Okay, sorry about that. So God, man, this is just. I don't know if you hear it through the microphone, but you can actually hear them passing by, like these really and there'll be like a series of motorcycles that will just sound like they're like somebody installed an amplifier that's just aimed like right through the window. I mean, it's the most. I wear headphones pretty much constantly as a result of this, and it actually helps me a lot. I mean, I'm telling you, like if you need instantaneous things to give you relief, I mean, I don't use these right here unless I'm doing this, but like these type, the plungers that have the different size suction cups, especially if you're doing like audio entrainment type things for yourself. Do self programming instead of letting other people program you. Find what works for you, what tones work for you, kind of thing. But these, especially like for music or whatever you're doing with audio tones, um, these really help me like just seal out a lot of that sound. It's not perfect, but anything you can do to attenuate or reduce the sensation of those signals, the better. So
Well, we'll see if that's any better. It seems to be. Um, you, the th- The interesting thing about it was when I was recording something with
I'm
Stuart
gonna
Spurglow, we
interrupt
had
you.
exactly that thing with a motorbike.
Yeah, I'm gonna interrupt you because I almost forgot this point. This is something that's been cycling through my head, and I really don't know if this is my own thought, but they keep telling me, listen, dude, if it's measurable, it's provable, and if it's provable, you cannot call it a conspiracy any longer, right? So the nice thing about what we're dealing with here is that things that involve radio frequency, if that's what you believe is happening to you, they are verifiable. There are ways to do that. Now,
Okay,
I,
technical
I'm
talk, meters. What should people get to do that?
well,
What
and
frequency
I'm
ranges? Where do you get them?
so spectrum analyzers. And now, as far as the frequency ranges go, that's the thing that I'm struggling with learning myself. And I'm not going to pretend. Listen, I'm a 20-year radio frequency engineer, right? But I'm still kind of dumb. I mean, I let software do most of my job for me. Okay, I mean that's. I don't know what else to tell you. That's the honest confession. There's a reason why I didn't feel right doing it for years and years and years. My heart was not that into it. I enjoyed doing it, and it made pretty decent money. But was I in love with it? No. I mean, that work wasn't. I don't know how to describe it. It clearly made me miserable sometimes, you know. And so I wonder what
spending your life in an air conditioned racks room with a lot of fan noise on your own with nobody to talk to.
Yeah, exactly. It has that effect on your psyche, you know. And then by the time you get home, you're done. I mean, you're not you're completely spent. You're cooked. You're fried, you know. So the nice thing about this thing though is if you feel like something radio frequency related is happening to you, then it's really just a matter of if you run across a theory, okay, and they're telling you like this weapon operates, this is the thing you have to get. And this is what I'm struggling with, to be frank with you. Nobody puts out information that says it operates on these frequencies. It almost never happens. Now, you probably have information, so I need to like dig through that, the basis material or everything like that.
There's something which is not allowed to get. There's a lot of meters you can get for relative, but there's a block between 1.5 megahertz and 25 megs.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that I specify too that if you're going to use a spectrum analyzer to sort of measure signal, you do want to have the right frequency range, and then there's other things like EMF meters, and frankly, that's the thing. Like, as much as I've been working around EMF and things like that, you know, on the job level, nobody really cared. I don't mean that like as far as regulatory, that all stuff gets done. I'm just saying like it wasn't something I walked around thinking about ever. You know, I didn't, and you know what's absurd about that is that my job the last 2 years has basically involved strapping on this heavy backpack that's like this thick, okay? Actually more like that, about that tall. I mean, and it has a panel with 4 phones on it that operate on 4 different frequencies, okay? Now, then underneath it is a heavy scanner, 4 backup batteries, all right? And that all goes into a plastic shell. And there's antennas on it and inside it, all right? And then it has a Bluetooth and a Wi-Fi connection to a tablet that I hold in front of me. and I have my iPhone in my left pocket, and then I have a work phone that I can answer to my, you know, whoever I'm running the job for that day. Then they're going to call me on the other phone. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, that's a lot,
and
right?
They're all in gigahertz, aren't they?
Well, like I ran, so in general terms, like 700 range, 850 range, 1900 range, and 1700, 2100 range in megahertz. So it's a lot of different frequencies to be running through, and then you tack onto that whatever Bluetooth and Wi-Fi is operating on, right? Yeah. Now you have those 2 things. You know what I've observed actually lately is that even now I struggle with dropping, like not holding on to a device that's wireless in some fashion.
Yes.
So I'm drawn to do it, and I have to actually train myself to not hold on to a wireless device. Isn't that amazing? Like, how do you how does that happen?
Drop it?
Yeah. And so like a good example, like, so I have either my iPhone, and then of course you're going to be drawn to that, right? You're just going to want to hold it and go through your applications. I actually got really good at training myself a few years ago to totally shut the thing off. And actually I left the smartphone off for about a month and a half, and I've never made so much progress I don't mean like as far as the effect on the frequency. I think sometimes it's just like how much it occupies your life, like your connection to that device as opposed to your connection to the people around you. That's why I did it. At the time, it had nothing to do with frequencies or anything like that. It was really just, I was so distracted by it all the time because that's my job. I mean, at my job, even I have this device distracting me, this device distracting me. I have instant messaging programs. I literally had like 4 monitors or 3 or 4 monitors at my cube. I ran propagation modeling software that would basically run the patterns on the antennas, and like that's actually kind of a cool part of the job. You basically can say, well, I want this tower to be 250 feet tall, put it right in this exact spot, and then put an antenna pointed this direction at 30 degrees, and then 180 and 300, right? And then put this type of antenna, make it 40 degrees wide, about 77 degrees, beam this way, and then I don't know, like 19 dB gain, right? For example, and then you get a specific pattern, and it shows you on the software like this is where it's going to cover, how strong.
I wish I had that stuff.
It's awesome, see, but you can get stuff like that on a consumer level, and I need to start researching it more myself because honestly, I've got a problem here, right? And I'm clueless as an engineer about what are the reliable ways to do it, because the problem is if you get something like a software application, they're all hackable, So if you're going to sit around doing EMF readings on a phone, dude, I made them yesterday. I know it's worthless, right? It's not
people
really
get these things. You got X-rays and infrared and all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a worthless app, but when you're desperate for answers, you just start whatever works, right? And then you'll buy.
Could you explain to ordinary people why the apps are worthless to do that?
Well, because everything's hackable, and you have to remember that an application is just made by some developer. It could be your next door neighbor for all you know. I mean, seriously, you don't know who makes that application half the time, and a lot of times you'll just look at who the developer is and like what else they've developed. And a lot of times you see they're just making like these really simple calculator things, but what you get with that free app a lot of times is malicious code. And so
is that because they've copied it from somewhere, or they intentionally did it? No. It doesn't matter. You just get malicious code.
You get malicious code with it a lot of times, and sometimes I think that here's the thing. So this is where it gets tricky. Maybe that developer made the application, right? But somebody might go in and mess with that application and tinker with it, and then make it like piggyback on top of what it's already, like the application already might have some like gaps, like maybe it like tracks your GPS coordinates without you knowing it, for example. Well, then maybe somebody else can like tap into that application and actually maliciously change the code. And if your carrier has you routed back and is watching you or whatever, like any application you get potentially is going to be malicious. Like you can't count on anything you receive into your phone. There's always somebody else that it has to go through, It doesn't matter who it is. It could be that app developer, it could be your carrier, it could be, it could be Apple, it could be Microsoft. It doesn't really matter. It's always going to somebody someplace. And in between where it's going, it can be intercepted. All right? So don't believe everything you read on the internet. That's the first thing. Like you have to like look at it like you did back like encyclopedias like years ago, right? If you only had one set of encyclopedias, and this is something I'm stealing from Anton Wilson, if you only had one set of encyclopedias, well, you would be restricted to one set of ideas. Well, he had like 8 or 9 set of encyclopedias during his time, right before the internet. Because to him, he was giving himself a breadth of information. Like he was like, okay, I know that each one of these books is full of shit in some level, but you're going to find a nugget of truth here, a nugget of truth here, a nugget of truth here. And I would tell everybody, approach these theories that way. Find your nuggets of truth, listen to these people, but don't accept anything as gospel. That's all I would say. Because what I found is that there's people who have radically different views from me who oftentimes really do have actually, like at the core of it, they know exactly what's going on. But all the reasons behind it are wrong. You know what I mean? Like they don't have, and maybe I'm wrong about that, like that's just my perception of them, right? And we're all sort of in these various states. Like, there might be, and I guess a good example of that is like there's things that I would just shut myself off to involving conspiracy theory as an RF engineer, okay? And I feel like that's by design a lot of times, because like the hidden tower phenomenon, you're probably familiar, right?
Yeah.
And again, and I'm going to approach this cautiously, because I know there's a lot of people who hold this issue near and dear to their hearts. The first thing you need to do right now before you do anything is just do some basic searches on concealed configuration antennas. I'm not saying this is nothing that's top secret, guys. It's all on the internet.
I think the whole point of these things was so that you didn't have these ugly cell phone towers.
Thank you. It's a no-win situation when it comes to these towers, because if you conceal them, then some people will say you're hiding them. And
well,
if
isn't that the whole point? You get these do-gooders.
Thank you.
Who say these terrible, ugly things, get rid of them, but they're actually getting you to encourage to have concealed towers, so you don't know it's there.
And then, yeah, exactly. So you have these two dynamics playing against each other, and then it turns into a conspiracy theory. When honestly, I can tell you, as the guy who actually, designed them and submitted those designs and met with the landlords and did all the research. I mean, I did all the field work. I'd scouted for sites. That's the fun part of the job. You get to go out in the field, and I covered Washington and Oregon. I mean, rural Washington and Oregon. We want to talk about a sweet job. I mean, I got to do that. I used to get
wonderful. When you see this wonderful country, yeah.
Dude, and you get on top of these mountains, and you're looking everywhere, and you're doing all these line of sight measurements. I mean, that part of the job, awesome. The cubicle part sucks. It sucks, and that's 90% of it. But the 10% you get, I'm telling you, when you're up on top of those hills and you're really doing the creative work of the design, there's few feelings that are that good. So I don't want to like dog the work at all. I mean, it is.
Yeah, well, it's something I loved doing when I was putting on the pirate stations.
And
running but, a megawatt. I
don't want to lose this thought. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but with the hidden tower thing, here's the thing. So like, it almost seems like that type of thing is embedded in certain types of people's material as a way to discourage people like me from listening to their valid concerns. You see, and so me and a lot of people that I don't want to speak for anybody I've worked with, because I know there's a lot of open-minded people, but what tends to shut us off, and like we want to talk about triggers, right? Everybody has like a mind control trigger. I'll tell you what a radio frequency engineer or a wireless engineer's trigger is for shutting you down into listening to your concerns. I'm going to give you the secret here. Talk about hidden towers and how they're all concealed and that we're doing evil things to them. They will shut you down in a heartbeat. Why? Because we know we're not doing that. That's not our intent. Now, if it's being done and that's somebody else's intent, whatever. I've never met a single guy in my industry who like rose and says like, we're going to sneak this in there and beam this. I've never seen that, okay? No one's ever like, that's never been something that I've ever heard. But is it possible? Is it plausible? Can it happen? Yes. But is that why those things are up there like that? Like when it's they're hiding it in a church steeple or making it into a cross, or they're called the monopines, or like the pine tree looking ones that don't fool anybody. I mean, nobody's fooled, right? So is that really a valid theory? Okay.
I think again, in this country there was a huge thing about Tetra and how it hurt the actual signals. It's the pulsing in the signals. That's the concern. It's not necessarily the actual carrier wave. It's what's on them. It's those click, click, click signals which mimic brain code and other things, and like Light-Fi flickers. They put the internet on that, but it also has stuff that can go straight into the optic nerve.
I'm glad you mentioned this, actually, because here's my this is my confession as a sort of an ignorant engineer. Like, I've never really been a guy that really understood a lot of fundamentals. Okay, I was just somehow able to do my job through creative thinking. That's the best way I can describe it. And I'm very fortunate to have had a lot of patient people around me who sort of, I think, did sort of understand that about my personality and sort of took care of me in that way, and were very patient when I was going through some just weird experiences, because I've been strange my whole life, man. I don't know what to tell you, but it just seems like the strangeness is just like increased lately, but it's turning into something that actually where I feel like 10 times better than I ever did in my life, frankly. Especially, I mean, even as we're talking right now, I'm feeling better.
Let's get down. Let's focus on why you wanted to leave. What did you notice? What was the thing? This hive thing, this insectoid, whatever you talked about.
So like that's the thing. Like, so they were telling me to like this bee. Like I was telling you, like I was listening to that song, and then it made me think of bees. And they were telling me that the bee condition is analogous to the human condition. and that if we study more about what's happening to bees, we'll learn more about what's happening to our own condition. But now, how do I present that theory in a meeting? You know, you're meeting with your system performance guy and everything like that in your company, and you're like, hey, buddy, you know, I think that we're mimicking the patterns of bees' communication signals possibly, and I think that we should really investigate that. I'd be laughed out of the room, dude. I mean, again, maybe some people might like agree with me. There's a possibility, but by and large, I don't think anybody would be interested in studying that unless it's at like an academic level. And now that's my problem. I'm thinking to myself, well, hell, I have all these ideas about things, and like, what do I do with it? It doesn't seem like we have.
Why don't we just nail it down and use this opportunity to present that so that the relevant people can watch it?
Oh, well, yeah. So, like, if you put a link,
so this is your opportunity to do that presentation.
Well, so if you put a link into like a code division multiple access, I guess, and there's sort of like a, I don't know, where was that pattern? Basically, let me explain it. So, so code division CDMA is what we use for voice calls primarily, right? And I just started noticing like they have, like they're called base stations, right? That's the basically the brain of the tower, okay? And right there at the brain, that brain connects back to a central office, okay? So all your traffic is reporting from that brain back to the central office, and that's what they call a switch. And then the, what do you call it? The, see, I'm getting interrupted, I apologize.
What's interrupting you?
So the base station, it's
when you're interrupted, just explain it.
Well,
explain what happens.
Seriously, it feels like something's going like this, like right down the middle of my brain. It goes wah 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 wah. That's the. I mean, it's the sensation I get, and it sounds still like I have. It's really, I feel like I'm on a moving truck, like I'm just going like this, and I can almost hear the engine hum. It's almost like it sounds like the idle of the bus. Quite frankly, I mean that's really. It sounds like the idle of the bus is right in my ear, and I can't get rid of it anywhere I go. So, it's the best way to describe it.
But it seems that this happens every time we try to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, it intensifies. I mean, it's always sort of there lately, but as I talk about these things, it just gets more and more intense.
I mean, you mentioned about getting some kind of hat, some head coat.
So, yeah, sorry.
So that's
why
I suggested the John Lear hat. The only hat that's worthwhile is a John Lear, approved by John Lear and Bob Lazar, aluminium top hat.
But that's the point, though. Like, you know, so, you know, if something's
totally
being
useless,
pointed
at
at,
least you've got a decent looking
pointed
hat.
at you, like, what good is it really going to do to have that hat on? But when you're desperate for answers, you know, like one of the things, let me interrupt that really quick. I worked for somebody, and they would repeat back to me, and I know this is sort of a cliche, but they would say in the absence of information, we create our own narrative, okay? And that's critical. Like, you have to remember that when you're dealing with this stuff too, okay? That you have a lot more control over that aspect of in absence of information. And remember that first piece, right? And that's the trick that's being played on your brain. And then remember the second piece. If it's measurable, it's provable. You know, if it's provable, it is not a conspiracy. Always remember that. Drive that into your head. Those are two great thoughts. Troubleshoot your life, troubleshoot your brain, and troubleshoot your theories. All of them. Think very critically about yourself, your life, and the world around you, and these theories. Don't embrace these theories wholeheartedly, like the minute they enter your life, they're going to be like the thing that solves all your problems, because that's what happens. You get that one little nugget, and it tells you something about your experience that's like, wow, this is what's happening to me, you know? And then you get sucked into the other piece because you're so desperate for information that you get reeled in, you know? And so if you're lacking critical thought, you're not going to troubleshoot all the information you receive from people, you know? And a lot of those presentations, and it's the thing, sometimes it's malicious. There is that. There's people out there who have, like, they put out theories that are absolute fabrication, no question in my mind. And I don't want to call anybody out, but I think that anybody who's been in the wireless industry who perpetuates the theory of hidden towers had either a radically different experience than me in my 20 years, or they're just spreading disinformation. That's just my personal opinion. Okay, I don't want to take away from anybody else's experience, but I think the more we can take off the table when it comes to things that we're afraid of, and things that could plausibly be doing something, hidden towers is not it. Because if somebody's going to do something to you, they don't have to hide it. Okay, they don't. It doesn't require hiding it. That would almost take more effort and more, those antennas don't have, like when you make a hidden tower, I can tell you the mechanics of it if you're interested.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
They're not. They don't perform as well. You can't get as specific angles on where you need to be.
Yeah.
And so what you're forced to do is, like, normally I would be able to construct if I did whatever I wanted to, I could maybe put like 100-foot tower somonplace on a monopole, and then that would be a triangle.
Yeah. That's what we call that a lattice mast.
Yeah, monopole. Well, there's a lattice, and that's the self-supporting type, right? And that's like the triangular self-supporting lattice type, and they have the little X's that go up. And then you have a monopole that has more of a thick, like, cement base, and it goes like straight up like this. And then you have typically a triangular platform, although they can be quad sector, or even you can have 6 sector at times. I mean, it just depends on the type of configuration you want. And then you'll notice how they always have like different sets and arrays. A lot of times that's because the different carriers are doing what's called co-locating on each other's towers.
Yeah.
And that's because people asked for fewer towers. They didn't want as many around. And so the industry answered by saying, oh, okay, well, the FCC said, listen, municipalities said, listen, you need to share towers. And in certain areas, we don't want too many of them being constructed. So we have a requirement in our ordinances that say if you don't share, if there's available space on an existing tower and you choose not to share, then you may not get the space in that area that you want. You might have to go somewhere else. So, and then
but
obviously
there's also a technical thing that you can't combine the antennas too close to each other, otherwise they interfere.
Yeah, the center line. It's it's called tip-to-tip separation between you and the next carrier. That's the industry term. So, and I honestly, dude, it's been a long time since I've done, a lot of the specific site design.
Distortion products.
That's since last time I actually designed a tower was 2012. So, and honestly, even though I enjoyed doing it, I've really tried to detach from as many wireless things. So I'm happy to talk about them for everybody who wants to know more and stuff like that. But there's a lot of things too that I just sort of.
Well, do you know about how the signal? What is the actual signal shape like? What's the physical carrier? What does it look like?
I'm not talking about
the actual polar pattern. I'm talking about what does that waveform look like? What's in it?
I mean, do you want me to just draw?
Yeah.
Really quick? I have a whiteboard.
Because it's that which is of concern.
Sorry.
Because it's that which is going to people's heads. And I mean, my personal argument is it's not the cell phone towers which is the problem. No. It's the damn phone beside you because of the inverse square law. The relative field strength.
Thank you. And that's another thing too that I really suggest to everybody is don't use, again, here's my advice. All right. This is what works for me. And I would say that if you're sensitive to, if you feel like you're sensitive or you've genuinely proven to yourself that you're sensitive to it, make sure you use wired headsets. Always use as many things wired as you can as opposed to wireless.
Yes.
Avoid Bluetooth, avoid, wireless controllers. Like if your game console will let you plug in with a long cord, get a long cord.
Yes. I've wired this whole house with cable.
Thank you. And I'm doing the same thing.
When I'm sitting with the laptop on my bed in the bedroom, I plug a big long cable into it because it's not blasting that Wi-Fi right into your lap.
And I've known that about myself a long time, but even I'll forget, right? So then I'll move maybe from one town to the next, and the next place I set up Wi-Fi on my router, totally forgetting what I learned the last time about, well, dude, maybe I shouldn't have Wi-Fi on because maybe I'm a little more sensitive to it than people.
Now, why is it dangerous? Why is the Wi-Fi dangerous? Because the degree of Wi-Fi in people's homes now is exploding because they've got Wi-Fi on all kinds of electric sockets to switch things on and off. They have a massive field strength of Wi-Fi in people's houses now.
Look, here's the thing, man. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on EMF. I can't. Okay. I think that because of my time in the industry, I'm almost blissfully ignorant. I choose not to know, and now I want to know. So I'm learning along.
Did you go on any courses which said that there were?
I can explain the concepts. I'm just making sure that you understand here,
yeah. But in other words, there were no health and safety courses which said you shouldn't go near an antenna with such a field strength or anything like that.
Well, yeah. So like this is like what the bees told me. Okay, like when I got that communication, they said that like sometime between like 1900 and 1905, that's I think when Marconi did the first wireless test.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yeah, the radio amateurs have switched on to this. The radio amateurs have actually started to analyze. Something changed
Yeah,
when
yeah,
broadcasting started.
yeah. Exactly. And so they said that look, when that first happened, like it was disruptive, and but there was adaptation and there was a long time in between, right? We were able to sort of adapt because the modulation scheme wasn't the same as it is today.
Yeah, the
And like,
modulation, the switched
and so
from
yeah, so
the switch
like
to
I guess
amplitude modulation. Yeah, that's
that's modulation, right?
yeah, that is meant
That's
to be a big problem. The
okay.
digital square wave.
So you got your wave and you got modulation, okay? And then what they explained to me was like, so back then, this wave didn't have this type of
No,
this type
sorry,
of
are you talking about the
modulation.
bees explaining
The
this?
bees,
This
yeah,
bee
the bees said this,
intelligence?
yeah, yeah. I know. I know this sounds really bizarre,
No,
but
this is fine.
they start telling me like going so. They told me, remember, our condition is analogous to your condition. So you always have to keep that in mind. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, how do I talk about these things realistically? Like what? I don't know. But I'll just keep going. So they said basically that what really changed the next time was that between 1980 to 1985, that's when like cell phones started to first be sort of like commercially available. And so they wanted to. Sorry. Yeah, I get that thing. Sorry, let me get some water. Oh, yeah. Okay, so so they said between 1980 to 1985, that's when they started really noticing a shift. And they go, you know what? We adapted again, and they go, and obviously you guys adapted also. But then it just seems like lately something's been happening again, and they're having difficulty adapting. And they were really pissed off at me, and they're constantly sending me these messages saying like, look, dude, whatever's going on in your experience, even though we can intercede, we're not going to. Okay. And the reason why is because you need to feel what we're feeling, and until you get this out, you're going to keep feeling it. And I'm kind of ashamed of myself because I felt so stupid saying it out loud. And I'm sorry, guys, and I'm sorry to
No,
whoever.
it's fine. I mean, other intuitives have felt that this so-called B thing is representing some other consciousness, which is not
Yeah.
happy.
And I, yeah, see, it keeps getting disrupted. Let me like, I got to keep going. Sorry. It's
Okay.
almost like I have to like snap my fingers or something like that to keep my brain in
Okay,
sync.
yeah. Do what you need to do.
Okay, so here's the deal. And so
Try
what happened?
clapping your hands.
Yeah, actually, I've been doing lately is I kind of do this on
Yeah,
top of my head.
if you do a hand clap, the important thing is if you do a hand clap, it produces a wideband scalar blast. It disrupts it.
Oh, that's good
The
to
other
know.
thing which people actually just while you're, I'll
Oh,
just get if you
ice works
yeah
for me. Like putting ice against my forehead. I'm telling you, like, that really, really helps. Actually, if you don't mind, I'll do it really quick, and then I can keep going.
yeah okay do that, and I'll get something which we're talking about. Okay. Okay, we're still running, so just keep going. Again, ignore me. Right. Hello. Your audio's got very bad. Can't hear you. I think you've pulled something out. Still can't hear. I can hear you rattling on the keyboard.
Any better?
I can now hear you. Now, what I'm going to show you is, from your point of view, people have been throwing these things at cell phone towers. Now, I'm going to just demonstrate this right up to the camera for you. This here on your camera, that it's in the shadow. Can you see that? Can you see that? Because I'm seeing it almost in silhouette. Oh, I can't hear you.
You there?
And now I can hear you.
Okay, does it sound all right?
No, I think you're running off the mic on the laptop.
Yeah, I am. So let me, because I think my headsets. This happens actually. Anytime I'm talking about something that seems to be helpful, I get microphone interruptions.
Okay, well let's get this on a light here. So
well, let me start.
This is very important because from a cell phone engineer, you may not be aware of this.
No,
Can you see out a bit better?
Yeah, I am actually. I have,
These are orgone disruptors.
Can I show you something?
Now you got one as well?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, let's all show her. Okay, you got them, right? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Now, are you aware that those need discharged every so often?
Yeah, I hear you're supposed to put them in light.
Well, basically electrically discharge them. I mean, there's nothing magical about them. Basically, you're dealing with a multi-field, random field capacitor that generates a random.
This is completely I'm learning, okay, and so I'm definitely looking for other people to help me understand this better.
This one here's got compressed crystals in it.
Well, see, and that's the thing. I think there's something to this design.
That starts putting out scalar pulses, apparently.
No, and I hope he doesn't.
The thing that you've got looks like a rock.
See, yeah. So you got down here. I think that he actually has a website. The guy who made this one in particular, called RadioMysterium.com.
Well, that looks more like a. You've got to have it absolutely packed full of. Stuff.
So you see the layers at the bottom like that, and how he packs it.
Not enough of that. That makes it look pretty.
But the metal shavings at the bottom, and then he's got this layer, and I can't remember what he puts in here. I don't know. There's something about this orgonite that I think.
Don't call it orgonite. That really annoys me. Orgonite's a rock or something. It's
all right,
orgone.
I apologize. That's the term I hear it referred to. So what is
it's a complete bollocks.
Frankly,
what it is, it's just taking the electric field and it's randomly scattering it as a capacitor, so it completely scatters an E field. But there's not enough stuff in that to do that.
I'm fascinated by the mechanics of it. I want to learn more about
it needs to be full. This is completely full the whole way up. What's happening is people are buying those things and they look pretty, but they're not doing the job. The whole point is to have a massive random scattering field. If you have another entity or something,
you're right. You're right, because when you really look at that up close, you see how it's shaped. You basically have that crystal straight in the center, and then it's got a coil wrapped around it. So as far as the pattern goes, I guess in scalar energy wise,
it looks pretty, but it's these things you need to be able to measure these things.
No, you're right, because it's almost like you're going.
Orgonite is.
No. Here, let me explain what I'm talking about. Because the way it is, it's like this, and then you got the coil kind of goes around it, right? And so that's the crystal, and then you have another one like that, and that.
Well, the ones which really are going to help, okay?
That.
If you want to have a look at this one.
I'm a horrible artist, so I apologize for all this stuff. But and then you got. So I don't know.
That layer on the bottom is a waste of time.
Okay.
Okay. Now the important thing is, the people in the RAF got this stuff. Right. I'll hold this up now. This is actually a bifilar coil. You can't see that. Now the thing about
relatively, yeah, it's not. It's okay. You don't have to move. Don't worry about it.
Okay, well, this is a crystal with two coils. One is counterwind to the other one.
Okay.
Now this is important because you have two counter-rotating electric fields going through a crystal.
Yeah.
This little thing here.
Sorry to say, yeah, because I'm learning. So.
Well, this has been developed by a guy who managed to get rid of greys and other entities that were coming in using this stuff.
Great.
Because it's called a zapper. But it's pulsing. This is a 555 timer. I don't know what the frequency is, but it sends a pulsed wave into this. Now this wire is tightly wound wire, and then it's wound round the crystal. Again, we have one coil going one way and another coil going the opposite way, which means you're generating two pulsed opposite fields of counter-rotating stuff. That's what CERN does. Yeah. CERN is producing two counter-rotating magnetic fields of immense power, and that's what the Nazi Bell was doing with two counter-rotating electric fields using a red mercury.
Yeah.
And that's when you start doing stuff like that. That's when you're going to start having an effect. Now the thing is that I used to bring that into work all the time at Sky Television because there was a heck of a lot of stuff going on there in terms of other stuff from other dimensions coming in, and they didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happened was a gentleman that I know he's on bases called Matt Todd, who's since disappeared. He had one of those pyramids fully populated with all the different shavings. I mean, he's made it pretty by having gold shavings, brass, and aluminium, so there's different colors there, and he made a little bit of blue stuff at the top. But that's absolutely packed, and the crystal inside it needs to be at the base, so that when the resin sets, it pressurizes the quartz, and then the quartz starts being active. And that's what they've got in the base of, or a certain position in the Bosnian pyramid, where they have a giant crystal surrounded by ceramic. And that's producing an acoustic wave, that's a scalar wave, it's not a Hertzian signal, blasting out of the top of the Bosnian pyramid.
Yeah, so like when you say that, so if a person has a theory on something like this, what do they use to measure it? Because I don't know those things. Like, how do you measure scalar energy? It seems like that would be a really expensive device to like truly understand. Like,
well, that's it. But an acoustic wave, there's a 32 kilohertz acoustic audio signal coming out of that thing, like a fax machine.
Okay.
I think it's 32 kilohertz. It's that sort of frequency, and it's about a meter wide. And the point about it is because it's scalar. In other words, it's a non-Hertzian wave. It doesn't degrade as it goes up in distance, like a vector wave would, an inverse square wave law.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between vector waves and whatever these other waves are, scalar. Mm-hmm. The scalar term is something a lot of people need to get a lot more across it, but it's a scalar component of that. So, okay, right. Tell us what's on those waves.
Oh, so you mean as far as like the industry stuff from before?
Yeah.
So basically what they were telling me was that they've been struggling with adapting to the multiple different frequencies in the environment, right? And don't let me forget this because this is sort of... All right, so let me get the frequencies down, right? So back in the 80s, right, when cellular first started, and this is the technology that I learned on, okay? Or rather the band that I learned on. The only thing I ever did design-wise or even in my work experience for the first, basically until 2012, I only worked on 850 megahertz. That was it. And I had one experience in Oklahoma where I worked on the 1900 megahertz frequencies. I'm not sure exactly what bands or whatever within that.
Well, basically we're jumping up into microwave.
It's called PCS frequencies in the States.
What does that stand for?
What's that?
What does PCS stand for?
Personal communication system, I think, and basically it was originally its intention was to be, because that 1900 carrier, it's basically like because like 850 is like this, and then you get into like 1900 and it gets to be more like that, is my understanding. So forgive me if I'm
Well, there's a lot more of it. You got a bigger number.
Yeah, yeah, and again, you're going, as opposed to the right. So, again, getting back to its frequency, right? The frequency. So, at any rate, sorry, man. This is like anytime I'm going to start talking about it, I start getting the thing. Give me a second.
Have you had any kind of acoustic wave jammer in the house?
I can try. Here's the thing, so
you want to listen for white noise above.
This sound really weird. I had a message telling me to turn off my scalar protection during the interview. Like, it's worthless. It's not doing you any good. Shut it off. So I turned it off and actually set it down on the ground. I'm not joking. See, here it is. I have it shut off. I'll turn it back on. I'm going to give it another shot because something's going on. I'm troubleshooting, right? I don't know.
No, that's great. That's good. That's all you can do because that's what everybody's got to do.
I'm through it with you, okay? That's all I can tell you. So let's get back to this because I think that helped. I'm not sure if it did or not, but at least my brain's kick-started. So back then...
You might want to put that in the proximity of the other one.
Yeah.
Then that'll help.
Actually, I have two. This one does something different, but I actually have two of them. Up there. All right. So I worked on 850 megahertz mostly, and so that was like the early days of wireless, right? There up until about the 90s. This was all there was. You had basically in any given town in the United States, you pick between one of two carriers, and they owned what's called spectrum licenses. Okay, so in the 850 days, you had the A band and the B band. All right, and it was again, it depended on where you live. I don't want to get into like all the different people who occupied whatever bands or whatever, but there's all kinds of companies that have had the licenses over the years, and they can get shuffled around, but it doesn't happen that often because it's the technology that it takes to run it. It can't get you can't just switch frequencies easily. It's not like it's something where you can just decide to go
hardware on the tower.
Yeah, on the tower, you can't just make a decision to go from 850 to 1900 megahertz or to add 1900 megahertz on top of 850, and that's what they're doing now. Is like early on in my career, it was easy. I'm telling you, I had it so easy, and all I worked on was this. The only thing I had to memorize were frequency channels, and I still have them memorized. I could tell you all of them. I can go down every list and tell you every channel inside the 850 megahertz band from memory. But, there's a whole other world of cellular and PCS frequencies out there that I never touched upon until I got to a contract that I had in Walnut Creek. So that's when I had like a smack in the face wake up call that I really didn't know shit. Because now I was working with like multiple bands, multiple frequencies, and there's like I was like, I don't know, I can't.
Of course, you're dealing with digital TV at the HDTV, sure. That's all mixed,
Yeah. So anyway, so this was all I dealt with before, but lately, like I've had to memorize channel sets and everything else that are in 700, 850. 1900, and this is LTE typically over in the States, at least that's what it's used for, is like LTE 4G. Not always, but most of the time, right? And then this is for voice typically, but anything can ride on it, right? Let's just say it's just amps, or rather, we'll say B band, AB band. And then 1900 is PCS. And then it's separated by blocks. So, you might have, like, they're like letters, right? It'd be like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then like, C1, C2, C3, C4, for example, like within that block. And then that'll be assigned to a specific frequency range that covers between, two different numbers. And like a lot of those I can just spit off by the top of my memory. I mean, I don't even need to look it up. I mean, that's how much this information gets driven into you. And then you have another set of frequencies that are called AWS, and that runs in the 1700 and 2100. Now this is new as far as in the States. And what the bees are telling me is that, back when this was it, right? When this was all we dealt with back in the 80s, they adapted, even though it was challenging. because now suddenly there are these carriers around and stuff like that, but they could still kind of get around and talk to each other, and their communication patterns were interrupted. But over time, this combination, a lot of the bees have become really sensitive to all the different combinations and stuff like that, and they said that that's sort of analogous to the human condition. And all I can tell you is from personal experience, that backpack that I wore, I had all this running simultaneously on my back. And I even had, for those other phones, totally separate devices that weren't even, even in the same networks or whatever and stuff like that. I mean, that's how many different things that I have strapped to me. And so you ask myself, why'd I leave the industry? It's like, well, you start noticing that maybe you're not having as much energy when you have that much attached to you. So, like, I guess I joke around that I'm the guinea pig, of radio frequency, and that's why I just say, like, I know it doesn't like give you cancer overnight, because how could I do that for 2 years with that many devices every day, right? At least it doesn't give it to me so far.
Well, what about this terms that you're talking about? Ancient algorithms, synthetic.
Yeah. So what they said
sacred math and patterns contained within the code.
Yeah. So what they said to me was that they wanted me to like think about the technology that we were using in the modulation scheme, because the combination of this is similar to how they do communication signals in their world, right? And that, and that they have similar patterns inside their scrambling and things like that. So, like, for example, with CDMA, it has a thing called Walsh code, okay? And again, these are concepts that I had a general understanding of, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be a complete expert on. I knew enough to do my job well, okay? But basically, Walsh code is 64 by 64 zeros and ones, random, right? This way and this way. And it just goes down like that. Kind of Matrixian, right? Like the Matrix, where he talks in the beginning about all the things going like that. And so the bees were kind of like going, how you see the way that our patterns sort of pixelate when you see, science fiction and things like that. That's sort of explaining how their communication patterns work. And they go, like the same thing you see digital television, like that's how you see through your cortex, right? You see digital images in that way, and that's similar to how we receive our imaging information as well, And I had to really think about that, because I'm not entirely sure what to make of it, except that I started noticing that when you start looking at sacred geometry and sacred math, you start seeing these constant repeats of 32, 64, 128, 192. And I don't study crop circles a lot, but hasn't the number 192 popped up in crop circles?
Yeah, a lot of crop circles are a bit dodgy with what they were putting into them.
Yeah.
But the guys he made them, yeah.
But anyways, they just said kind of like, pay closer attention to this. And so I'm trying to like research it a little bit more and things like that, because I do remember this about it. There was channel element cards, and they were like sort of resources, right? And so when you're in a base station, you have like a heart, right? And that's your timing, and it has like a GPS connection.
Yeah.
And so that's how it receives its timing. And all base stations have to be tied into that master clock that the GPS is providing, okay? And when you really think about that's at the heart of the base station, is that timing it's receiving. And that's on everything, right? Pretty much everything that's in the wireless world or any communications relies on timing, on the clock. And then you have like, it all kind of goes into this box of like amplifiers, radios, transmit receive modules, filtering, whatever it takes to sort of do your output, and transmit and receive output input signals and everything like that. Sorry, I'm getting blocked right now. I apologize.
Okay.
I really apologize.
I concur with that.
Man. I'm totally losing exactly. I mean, it's almost like I'm forgetting.
Okay, clap your hands. See if that helps.
Hold on.
Now, what was your thought pulse? What was the thought that just before this happened? Can you remember that, whatever that thought is?
I mean, I know we've been talking about like pulse modulation or pulse code modulation, things of that like.
Yeah, that's fine. There's nothing. What happened after that? What was in the code? You were talking about time from the
well,
GPS.
so like, yeah, so
they all
here's
synchronize that
so
time.
when we used to run on, like when I first started in the wireless industry, and I think I've talked about this already, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but it was all analog, okay? And, you know, for me, as somebody who's creative, well, I should say I used to be, honestly, this is the thing that I think has been, and sorry, I will get into the technical point, but it's analogous too. My creativity is absolutely nil. I can't write, I can't form thoughts. Like, that's why this codex I'm writing is almost an act of desperation to form a coherative narrative and a story together. It's a desperate attempt to sort of piece together what the hell's going on in my life and try to assign some sort of meaning to it, you know? And I have no doubt that things in here are legitimately tie into things that are sort of supernatural in nature. They are genuinely, there's something spiritual
it's this
about
pattern. You're producing a lot of patterns there. What was the thing that you got you into the pattern?
Yeah, like, so they were telling me, like, I know this is crazy, but they wanted me to watch Back to the Future. I remember, like, the whole thing about, 88 miles per hour. And so they had drawing, well, excuse me, I'm not doing this right. It's in my codex, but they started having me do like this, you know? And then they wanted me to think about X's and O's also, right? So they're saying draw 88s. And then I started drawing like these, I can't remember how I was doing this. It was like this X's and O's, you know, and they were just saying to do this over and over.
Mobius loops.
Yeah, and doing 8s and 8s. And then I realized, holy shit, this is a honeycomb. Like, I think it's a honeycomb. I think that they're trying to, like, this is like a way to talk to me. Like, they're saying, like, you know, this is how, well, and again, this was, I think, like, there are not many studies are done on this, and that really surprises me. But there was that one done a long time ago. Did you hear about this one where they had 2 hives, and they put a dummy cell phone in one hive, one that just looks like it. It's like, it doesn't broadcast anything. It just looks like one. So it's a placebo effect test. And then you put one in another hive, and it was actually active. So they would have it to where it would idle and then make phone calls or whatever. Well, when their observations of the 2 hives were that the one with the phone in it had minimal disruption to the patterns within inside the hive, but the one that actually had the signal broadcasting regularly, you didn't get nice, you know, the nicely formed honeycombs that are sort of like a combination of repetitious things, right? You know how they work, right, when they're developing the honeycomb. It's just this constant series of repetitions that wind up making a perfect shape.
They have a dance. They have this dance.
Yeah, it's like it's literally, it's very much chaos into order in that sense, right? To me, that's the true meaning of that. Not like what these people have bastardized it into to say, like, well, we'll take a shit on everything and we'll create order out of that. No, this is what they mean from, you know, chaos, order, you know, in my mind, at least. And at least this is like the vibe that I get from it. And basically, though, you had these nice, perfect honeycombs inside the one that didn't have the cell phone in it, but the one that did, they were malformed. There was colony collapse. There was literally bees that would just like fall over and like lose all motivation to do anything. And they were telling me to go, and like I was reading that, and they were like going, so think about that. Really, really think about it. And I did, you know. And so for me, the right decision for me was to not strap that backpack and you know, and expose myself to it. But that's my decision, okay? That's completely my decision. If there's a person out there who thinks that that's for them and they want to strap that backpack on, go for it. You know, if you feel like it's okay for you and it doesn't have any effect on you, awesome. I know for me, I can speak from personal experience, it seems to have an effect on me. I don't blame anything or anyone. It's just how I feel. I lose creativity. I lose all sense to do things. But you know what's happened since I stopped carrying it around? I mean, now I feel like creating. I feel like writing. At least the spark is there. The ideas are arriving. It feels like my heart beats normal again. You know, I feel it. And what happened to me for a while was I really was only capable of silence and rage. I didn't really have much in between. And what they were telling me about, and I'm sorry I already erased it, but when they were telling me about those X's and O's and how everything sort of ties together to form the honeycomb.
Well, we're out of time on part 3, so we're just kind of a quick break, shape change, and keep going, okay? I've actually run out on one. Okay.
We're going to pause.
Perfect. Yeah.